Welcome back to Left Unattended, the podcast where we explore the parts of ourselves and our stories that often get overlooked. I'm your host, Ron Sosa. Many episodes of this podcast focused on neurodivergence, identity, and what it means to move through the world when your internal experience doesn't always match the systems around you. But sometimes the path to understanding ourselves comes through unexpected teachers. Today's conversation brings us into a space that many people have never experienced before: horses. At least I have not experienced many. My guest is Susan Bloom. Susan is a lifelong horsewoman, a master equine gestaltist, and an equine-assisted play shop facilitator trained in the equine gestalt coaching method. Through her work with horses and humans together, she helps people uncover unfinished emotional business, release limiting patterns, and reconnect with themselves in powerful ways. Susan's journey into this work is deeply personal. She spends more than 5 years as a caregiver to her husband during his battle with a rare autoimmune disease. She found herself drawn towards healing work that honored both grief and resilience. Today, she partners with her herd to create powerful experiences for individuals and groups focused on healing, leadership, and mindfulness. In this episode, we'll talk about trauma, burnout, emotional awareness, and the surprising ways horses mirror what is happening inside of us. If you've ever struggled to get out of your head and back into your body, or wondered what it would feel like to be truly seen without judgment, this conversation will open a door into a different kind of healing space. Let's step into the round pen together. Here's my conversation with Susan Bloom. Hi, Susan. It's great to have you on the podcast here. I'm so excited for the listeners here to hear something a little bit different. So normally we're interviewing guests about their neurodivergence and the stories inside the workplace, but yours is a little bit different. Do you want to tell us who you are and kind of how you got to do what you do? Because it's definitely different than my norm.
Sure, Ron. I am happy to be here. Thrilled that you asked me to do this. I am a master equine gestaltist. And what that means is I partner with horses to help people overcome experiences, possibly from their past, childhood trauma, could very possibly help with neurodiversity as well. I haven't experienced that. I haven't really worked with someone on that. And I got here, my husband got very ill with a rare autoimmune disease, and I was his caregiver for 5.5 years. And at the end of that, he actually died right after, about 5 weeks after I graduated from the Equine Gestalt program. And so that's, and I came to, we traveled a lot to see doctors, to the Mayo Clinic, lived in Western Kansas, to the Mayo Clinic, MD Anderson in Houston, Denver, which was closer than anywhere else. And we eventually settled on KU Med Center in Kansas City. And the road pretty hot. Drove over 57,000 miles during that 5.5 years. So, yeah, it was. And my heart is for caregivers, for doctors who I'd like to help with burnout, reduce burnout, because I think it's probably the good ones who get burned out, and veterinarians as well. Again, I think it's those good ones who get burned out. They care so deeply that it's very hard.
Yeah, and I think that's where our crossover is. Like, I'm working with veterinarians on burnout on the neurodiversity side and unmasking and authenticity, and you're kind of working with them on a trauma-informed side, which I think is phenomenal. And I'll probably get on my soapbox and have some absolute statements that I really try hard not to do. But I'm going to say an absolute statement that I think all neurodivergent individuals, so ADHD, bipolar, dyslexia, autism, whatever your flavor of neurodivergence may be, I will make an absolute and say everyone who is neurodivergent has some sort of trauma. And so I'd imagine that this kind of work can can help anyone really in that trauma informed way. So talk to me about Gestalt, because that's something like I had to look it up after before you and I talked the first time, and I was like, what is this? And apparently it's some German word. But so talk to me about like what Gestalt is and how did you get into that?
I, Gestalt is loosely translated as wholeness or to flow
Hmm.
back to form. And as Gestaltists, we believe that you're not broken and that you have the answers inside you. And we help you come to find those answers, whether that be, one of the things in my case, I have a lot of feelings of not being knowledgeable enough. Now, I've had 4 years of Gestalt training, 2 with the horses, 2 without. And I am certainly knowledgeable enough. And that comes
Yeah.
from childhood. It comes from a teacher in 4th grade. It comes from my
Mm.
brothers who were very smart and overachievers. And it comes from my mother a little bit,
Yeah.
who grew up at a time when women didn't think, maybe would be a good word for that.
Yeah, I can definitely relate. And being a neurodivergent person, I would say, like growing up, that I can name the teachers that would, call me lazy. You're not living up to your potential. You're all over the. I was the kid who got the desk pulled up to next to the teacher's desk because I would talk too much. I couldn't sit still or whatever. So it was always like, from a very young age, othered for, very similar. So I love the work that you're doing. And I love your definition of Gestalt, or the definition of Gestalt, because what we say in coaching is that our clients are whole and complete in and of themselves. And I'm just here to hold up a mirror and really work with whatever's already inside. No one has the perspective or lived experience other than the one person themselves. And so they are the only ones to have the power to move forward in their lives with however they move. And so I kind of love that. I think it goes very hand in hand with coaching, which is why love having this conversation with you today.
Nice. And the program that I went through was called the Equine Gestalt Coaching Method.
Ah,
So,
very
yes, we're
nice.
trained in coaching rather than it's Gestalt coaching. So,
Yeah. So what would it look like? So if I was your client, like walk me through what that kind of looked like, or what your clients go through when they come through Gestalt coaching.
okay. So, you would come to my ranch, or I mean, I could go someplace else to do a group to a facility that had horses. But come to my ranch, we would meet one of the horses, talk a little bit about what's coming up, which may not be what you thought you were coming to talk to me about.
Yeah.
And after I kind of get a feel for what needs to be done, I set up what we call an experiment or an experience and
Hmm.
walk you through that. And I saw this one while I was in training. A woman and her husband had adopted 2 children from Africa,
Hmm.
a girl and a boy, and the girl was older and had reactive attachment disorder.
Oh, wow.
And it got to the point where they had to make that they were feared for their animals and their son. And I mean, they were living in fear. So they opted to place her somewhere where they knew more about that. And this woman was close to finishing her training, and she and her husband had been looking for a ranch. However, while she was at home in their house, she would get just sick, I mean, physically ill. And I think her parents were in South Carolina. They went to South Carolina for Thanksgiving, and she was fine as long as they were there. Came back and she got sick again. She went to see her brother, same thing, came back, got sick again. So the experiment that was set up was in the round pen, a house, a rectangle made of flower boxes, which was her house, and every place else was not.
Okay.
And you could literally see, and QT was the horse she was working with, and you could see she'd step into that flower box and her body would just change, and she'd step out and she'd open up and she'd step back in. And she talked through things with the woman who was working with her. And pretty soon, QT went over and he picked up one of the flower boxes in his teeth and pulled it out as if to say, get out of the damn house.
Oh.
Within 2 months, they had made an offer on a ranch, and they had 2 possible offers above asking price on their house. It shifted the energy that much.
That's phenomenal.
It is.
Wow. Oof, I'm getting chills. As a city boy, almost my whole life, like living in cities and the kind of suburbs, I've never been around horses, but what I hear is that minimal amount of time I've been around horses is that you really have to like shift your energy around horses, right? Like that's a lot of the horse work is learning to kind of feel what's going on, be mindful of what's going on in your body and your system in the moment, and be able to shift that around a horse so they don't startle them. Is that kind of similar work?
Yeah. I mean, I bought a big horse just a few years ago, and he was not great with boundaries when I got him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, he knew that he was supposed to, I could lead him and do all the things. He would grab my shirt and just hold with his teeth and just hold on to it. He would get a little close when he was on the lead rope. And yeah, I've had to help him through that with me. And he will do the same kind of things with clients who need to work on their own boundaries.
So he's like testing your boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. He's
interesting.
He's a tester for sure. And I don't know, this might get a little woo-woo, but they balance chakras.
Okay.
They want our energy to be up at their level. They vibrate at a higher level than we do. And so they want to help us get there.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is. And, you know, the things that I see, we sometimes set up this actually is a great example. And this was a demonstration. It wasn't even a piece of work. What we do is we put someone in the round pen with the horse and we have them walk around the edge of the round pen and do math. And usually the horse will say, well, they're in their head. I don't want anything to do with them. This particular woman, she got about a third way around. She's doing these, you know, real simple math problems out loud in her head. 1 + 1 is 2, just real simple. And she gets about a third of the way around and she says, it takes me back to 3rd grade. And the pony that was in there with her shot over across the arena.
Oh, wow.
Because she had just briefly touched on those emotions. And she said, okay, I'm here to help. It was amazing.
I'm getting chills.
Again.
Totally. I'm like, ooh, I'm invested in these stories. This is phenomenal. Like, and so, like, so the horse comes over, and then, like, what happens between the client and the horse?
Well, it varies. In that case, you might feel really supported by the horse in your telling your story, getting into your emotions and telling your story. And they can, in the case of the woman in the house and the children, I mean, he literally helped her shift her energy to get out of the house they were living in. And this is a personal experience, I lived in Western Kansas up until 2.5 years ago. And after my husband died, I went to a retreat where we did Gestalt, and I was trying to decide the advantages to be in Western Kansas is, you know, there's not a lot of people there. It's remote. It could be very retreat-like. And disadvantages, it takes at least a day to get there from anywhere.
Gotcha.
You could you could jump on a plane and go to Denver and then fly into Hazer Gardens. Or Dallas Fort Worth, I think, flies into Garden City. But the flights out of those two smaller airports are expensive, and they're not at very good times. Don't make great connections. And if you would drive, it's, and I know this from personal experience, it's a good 5-hour drive from Kansas City.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely a day's drive.
3.5 to 4 from Denver.
Okay.
So that was the big disadvantage for me, especially to work with doctors or veterinarians or even caregivers. So I was in that, this was about a year after my husband died, and I was kind of in that thinking I wanted to move. And so she put me in the round pen with Ruby, the horse was Ruby, and put a pole in the middle of the round pen. And we said, this side is Western Kansas, this side's Eastern Kansas. And I talked through, she asked questions and I would talk through the pros and the cons and why I would want to move. And it was very scary. I was in my 50s and I had literally lived in Western Kansas all my life.
Wow.
And so I was doing that talking, and at one point I could feel Ruby was just right back here. I could feel her. And I was on the Western Kansas side, and as I stepped over, it felt like she was going to push me over. Like, that's where you need to be.
Mm.
This is what you need to do, where you need to be. Do it. It took me several more years to make it happen.
As life throws at us, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was in 2019. My dad died in 2020. My mom decided to sell the house the year later, and I hadn't gotten anything done. And it's like, well, this is where I need to be right now.
Okay. So I work with veterinarians all the time with burnout. Like, what's the difference in the Gestalt work for burnout? Is it just talking about it and have the horse kind of follow the energy, or what does that look like?
Well, it would I assume that maybe not as much as doctors, because there's not the whole HIPAA thing, but they try to keep things fairly confidential. Yeah. And they keep a lot of those emotions inside. And sometimes it might be something from, like I said, like childhood that is rearing its ugly head and needs to be cleared to help them release some of that energy. One of the things I like to do is to do groups or small retreats where you can feel truly supported by people who understand what you're going through. Again, caregivers would be definitely one of those things where, and when I bought this ranch, I had the thought in mind that I would like to have retreats here. So right now I have place for 6 people because I had a son living in my basement, and so he took it over. Once I get his stuff kind of moved out, I could possibly have up to 10.
Oh, wow.
For a small retreat here. And
that's awesome. We'll have to put the information about the location in the show notes. So definitely send that to me so we can get the listeners the location.
Okay. I'm about an hour from Kansas City.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah. And there's a really small town that's really close. But yeah, I'm about an hour from Kansas City. So about an hour from the airport. I've gone there a few times.
I'm curious because I'm kind of like, I've got clients, and I'm sure you've seen this with working with doctors and veterinarians on both. And I definitely work with mostly veterinarians and technicians. I think I've worked with one dentist and a mechanic, oddly, But what I find about doctors or veterinary medical professionals as a whole is they're so intellectual that they haven't really gotten into their bodies. Like, how do you work on on your end, like I definitely have to like pull and wrestle it out of them sometimes. Like, no, talk to me about your body. Like, I don't care what you think is going on.
Right.
Like, I want you to talk to me about sensations in your body. I do a lot of somatic work, but like, how do horses help them get out of their intellectualization of what's going on in their lives?
Oh, they have amazing ways to do that.
Yeah.
They might step on your foot. You're not, you're not in your body. There was a woman who was maybe a little overly pushy, and she was asked to tell the horse to do something, and she could not figure it out. The horse would back her up again, like in a corner. And she'd look out and say, well, what do I do here? What do I do? Tell him what he needs to do. However, you can do that. And finally, kind of out of sheer frustration, she stood up and said, okay, go over there and do this. And he was like, oh, okay, you want me to do that? Okay, I'll do it. So that's one of those ways. And well, and like I said, my big gelding does things like grabs my shirt and says, you're somewhere else. Come back to me. In extreme cases, when I've gotten in my head, I've had accidents with them. He actually, and I had him on kind of a long lead rope and was closing a gate, and I think I probably pulled the lead rope and he backed up into me and pinned me. And I mean, it hurt. Pinned me between the gate and his butt. He didn't mean to, and I was in my head.
Gotcha. So I would imagine you have to have a very special bond as the coach here with the horse to understand the behavioral shifts and changes of the horse, who are then paying attention to the person.
Right. And they wouldn't do those kind of extreme things with someone in the round pen. Yeah. I can get frustrated and forget what I'm doing and get in trouble.
I could imagine. So like as a coach, like I'm always watching my client as their energy shifts, or like how would I interpret their energy to shift, or micro expressions, or like how I'm interpreting what's going on. So in Gestalt coaching, you're saying you're really like kind of in tune of the horse and the client, or?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And of course the horse is in tune with the client too.
Yeah. I
had a woman who was here, and she wanted to work on, she said, I need to meditate 30 minutes a day. And I just have all this big energy. And then when I put her in with the horse, she had all that big energy and he didn't want to have anything to do with her.
Yeah.
So that's one of those really nice experiences where you can say, does this happen other times that you feel this way? She wanted so bad for that horse to be with her, and he was like, no, I'm not going to.
Yeah. Oh, this is fascinating. So you get, I just want to like unpack layers of this, because it's to me, it's fascinating to like, how do you differentiate, like, for example, the client who really wanted this horse, I don't know what she came to you for, but it's like, you really want this horse to like you, right? It's like, I want to pet the horse. I want the horse to like me. It's usually how humans, at least in my experience, act. And it tends to come from a trauma of negativity, or watching someone else get the attention that you craved, or whatever. You learned that you need to pursue the positive attention so that you don't get the negative, right? So like, how do you peel back that onion of the client? I mean, and be mindful enough, because as a coach, you've got to stay present with your own self and listening to your client, watching the client, and then to add in the horse, and then try and peel back layers at the same. Like, I'm just fascinated how all this works.
It's, and I love your about the attention getting, because it's kind of like with children. If they aren't getting attention, they'll get it any way they can, whether it be negative or
Yeah.
positive.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I see that with my grandchildren. I have a grandson who he's very good at, if you tell him not to do something, looking at you and grinning and saying, "What did you tell me I should do?"
What?
And doing it. Cute as a button, and very possibly neurodivergent at 5.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, it's kind of helping them get to the point where they're in their bodies. I had one woman here, and again, this was a demonstration where she wanted the horse to like her and to come to her badly, and I could not get her out of her head. And I had to ground her with some breathing and some stuff like that. And her husband and her disabled son happened to be there too. And I did finally got her grounded, and the horse came up to her and just kind of worked on her. Again, they do chakra balancing, which is kind of their thing. Yeah. I did another piece of work myself in training where, and this is a group activity, where you have 4 people to listen to your story. And like you said, when the energy shifts, as you're telling the story, the energy shifts, you ask them to move to the next person and go to the next part of the story. And the horse that was with me, I have a picture that someone took where you can see there are 4 people in a line, and there's me, and Rhiannon, the horse, is just right there in the middle of everything, giving her support. And then we did a nice let her balance your chakras and do what she needs to do afterwards. And sometimes that's it. A grief thing would be the same. You might just have them walk around in the round pen and go through their grief, and the horse is there as support and to help them release those emotions and to process that grief. I believe grief's with us forever, and there's still some help there to help process it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm thinking about, like, for my clients who are ADHD, or, where, our mind is everywhere, we're tracking, what the birds are going that way. Like, the attention we're bringing in so much more sensory information. Like, what are some of the grounding techniques that you use with your clients?
Well, breathing, of course. There's one that my mentor calls I Thou, where you focus on something internal and it just takes like 90 seconds. Focus on something internal, then something external, something internal, something external, while you're
switching back and forth.
And focus on that. I was doing that one day, and I had some music on, and one of the things that I was doing was to feel the air around me, and I could literally feel the beat of the music that was playing, and it was like, wow, that was amazing.
So lots of mindfulness work.
Yeah, and the horses are good at helping with mindfulness too. Like I said, if you aren't there with them, they might step on a foot or.
So, note to self: the next time I'm near a horse and it starts to act up, I'm going to be like, where am I at in my head? Where am I at? So, okay. And so tell us about so you have a company now doing this Gestalt work. Tell us the company and where we can find you, and where do we best reach out to you if this is the kind of work someone's interested in?
So the company name is Connection and Synergy. And I have a website, which is connectionandsynergy.com. I'm on Facebook mostly and LinkedIn, again,
Okay.
with either Connection and Synergy or Susan Bloom. And I do a little bit of Instagram.
We're always trying to play the social media
Yeah.
games, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then LinkedIn is where we connected.
Yes, it
So,
is.
okay. But Facebook is your primary and then your website.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Awesome. Is there anything else you would want our listeners to know kind of about Gestalt work, about the trauma-informed work that you do? What do you want people to know?
Hmm. So part of my platform that I like to present is that doctors or veterinarians need to connect with their patients or clients on a human level so that as patients or clients, we don't see them as superhuman.
Yeah.
We
You
see
don't see
them,
yourself as superhuman.
yeah, yeah. And I believe with probably with veterinarians too, but I believe with doctors that when they do that, just a little snippet. My husband had a pulmonologist who one day we were talking and I said something about my son or our son, who was about 14 at the time, had gotten a new shampoo that had set off my husband's asthma. And he just kind of chuckled. He said, yeah, he said, I have a 13-year-old boy. I don't know what it is about prepubescent boys and acts.
I love that.
And it's just that it only takes a few seconds.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm going to say it's probably the same with veterinarians, that
Yeah.
if they can be human with us, we're more likely to listen to what they say, to help our animals, take their advice. I hate to use the word, this is, of course, a word they use in medicine, to be compliant.
Yes. Yeah. It's interesting. I had a recent client who she did phenomenal transformation. She came to me like, I'm leaving the profession, like I'm done, like this is my last ditch effort. I think I want to find a position in vet med that's not clinical because I just can't do it anymore. And we worked together, and honestly, like at the end of it, the burnout was just like melting off of her. Like she
Mhm.
just really enjoyed vet med again. However, the interesting thing for me and the kind of the crossover that triggered in my head when you were talking was I asked her, what does it mean to be a veterinarian to you? And I'll never forget. And she said to me, I need to treat and prevent all suffering. And so anytime she was working with a client who couldn't afford or couldn't lifestyle wise do the first recommendation, she felt like she was failing as a veterinarian. And I was like, I mean, we're setting ourselves up for immediate failure just by your own definition of what your role is in your job. And it's like just that small tweak
Yeah.
was such a powerful
Yeah.
difference.
And it would be. And I had a dachshund who, I mean, his health had been failing, and he was 14, maybe. I mean, not really old, but not young by any means. And I took him in, and she said, well, he has stage 4 kidney disease. And I was like, okay. And she said, you need to inject fluids in his, subcutaneously. And I said, I can't do that.
Yeah.
That is not something I can do. If we need to do that, I'll bring him in daily,
Mm-hmm.
but I can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's, I'm really about that human animal bond connection. But I remember being a young medical professional where I would get so on my soapbox. Why you have a pet if you can't afford to take, or not afford, but if you can't take care of them when they need you the most? Like, I was definitely immature in a lot of ways when I first joined medicine. And what I've come to realize is that I've matured, emotionally maturity, and just like in the field is like the human animal bond is more important than a medical treatment. And if you're going to destroy that bond by giving fluids or bathing or whatever it is, like giving a pill, then to me, it is so much better to live the best life you can in the short time period that you have rather than extend the life with this horrible suffering of that bond being destroyed and you hating life and just being annoyed and frustrated with each other, because I gotta imagine it's not a great life for them to be doing something they don't want or trying to bite for when that's not their personality.
And at the time, I was talking with a colleague who happens to be an animal communicator, and she
Mhm.
said, he's comfortable. He says he's just floating on a raft down a river, and he's
Mm,
comfortable. She said, as long as he's comfortable, let him go.
yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful. I love that. I just want to thank you for coming on. I know this is not the normal style. I just loved what you were doing. I love the horse dynamic and the working with medical professionals and their burnout and the trauma informed lens. It just really speaks to me and some of the work that I do. So thank you for coming on and sharing that with the listeners here. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the
Yeah.
opportunity.
So for anyone listening, if you want to get into more of Susan's work, we'll have that in the show notes, her website, her Facebook tag, and everything else, phone number, whatever we need to get a hold of her. So Susan, have a wonderful rest of your day. I can't wait to continue this relationship and find out more. Maybe we work together. Who knows?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Left Unattended. A huge thank you to my guest, Susan Bloom, for sharing her work and her stories about equine gestalt coaching and the powerful ways horses can help us connect with ourselves. And of course, thank you, Dustin Bays, for editing and making sure this episode sounds as good as it feels. If today's conversation resonated with you, let's keep the connection going. Join my newsletter for weekly insights on neuro-inclusive leadership at www.synapt, that's syn-apt.me/newsletter. Learn more about coaching with me at coaching.syn-apt.me, it's syn-apt.me. And if you're curious about Susan's work on connection and synergy or equine-assisted coaching experiences, we'll include links to her website and social media in the show notes. Finally, if you've enjoyed this episode, please follow the podcast and leave a review. It helps more people find these conversations and reminds the world that belonging isn't a luxury. It's a leadership strategy. I'm your host, Ron Sosa, and this has been Left Unattended. Until next time.